This lesson is an algebra review on slope. We are going to, in the next few sections, start talking about how slope can give us an indication as to whether lines are parallel or perpendicular. And so we're going to review slope to get ready for those lessons. If you remember, slope is a ratio, which is just a fraction, and we use the phrase rise over run to remember slope. That means that if you look at a point going from left to right, you want to look at the rise, the vertical distance between the 2 points, and then the run, the horizontal distance between the 2 points. You can also get those if you are not given the line on a graph. If you're just given the line on 2 points, you can also take the difference between the y's, that will give you your rise value, and the difference between the x's will give you your run value. So you can use either one of those to find the slope of a line. If it's on a graph, you simply count. So my vertical distance between this point and this point, my vertical distance would be -2. The reason it would be -2 is because I had to go down 2. And then my horizontal distance would be 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So my horizontal distance would be 4. So the slope of this line would be -2 over 4. Or I can reduce that down if I want to and say that the slope is -1/2. So that's the way to do it if it's on a graph. If you have the coordinates and you need to use this way to find the slope, you certainly can do that. You simply take the difference between your y values. So 7 minus 2 is 5. And then the difference between 2 and -1. To get 7 to 2, I minus 5. To get from 2 to -1, I minus 3. So the slope of my line would either be -5 over -3, or since they're both negatives, I can eliminate those. They would cancel each other out, and the slope of my line would be 5/3. Okay, so that's how we find slope. If it's on a graph, we just count the rise over the run. If it's given to us in coordinate points, we just subtract the y's, and that's our top value, and we subtract our x's, and that's our bottom value. All right, what if I give you the slope in the form of an equation? Which number in this equation, y equals mx plus b, which number is the slope? It will always be the number next to the x once the y is by itself. Okay, that was a nice circle around the m. All right, so once the y is by itself, your slope is the number next to the x. Now, I'd like, some teachers say that the slope will always be next to the equal sign, but I don't say that because sometimes your b value is first and your mx value is second. So I always say that the slope is the number next to the x when your y is by itself. Okay, because then no matter where it is, you can find it. Let's see if it will switch. All right. What about the slope of a horizontal line? When you draw a horizontal line, let's see if, no, it will draw. Okay. Let's look at a horizontal line. There's no rise. It runs from point to point, but there's no rise either way. So the rise is 0, and the run can be whatever it wants to be. So your slope would be 0 over whatever. And so 0 over anything we know is 0. So the rise of all, the slope of all horizontal lines will always be 0. So how does that affect the equation? Well, we've got y equals mx plus b. My computer does not want to write today. but the m is going to be a 0. So that means that we'll take out the m and the x. So your equation for a horizontal line will always look like y equals, and then it'll just be b. If you remember, b is the y-intercept. So in this, for this line, it's a horizontal line, so the equation of the line would be y equals, and then wherever it crosses the y-axis. Now, depending, I didn't have the grid in quite the right place, but it looks like it crosses at about 1. So we would say the equation of that line is y equals 1, because it's a horizontal line, so the slope is 0. Okay? The same kind of thing holds true for vertical lines. Let me just get rid of the horizontal line and draw a vertical line for you. That's a nice straight line. What about the slope of a vertical line? A vertical line rises, it goes up or down, but it doesn't run anywhere. So now you've got a number on the top, but you have a 0 on the bottom. Mathematically, you can't have a 0 in the bottom of a fraction, because that's like saying you're taking so many parts out of 0. You can't do that. So what we say about a vertical line is we say a vertical line has an undefined slope. Let's see where I've written so far. Or we say it does not exist. You will see sometimes that it says does not exist. So how does that affect the equation? Well, it looks a lot like the equation for a horizontal line, except that a vertical line doesn't cross the y-axis. A vertical line is going to cross the x-axis. So the equation for vertical lines is going to be x equals, and then wherever it crosses the x-axis. In this case, it crosses at about 2. So the equation for this line would be x equals 2. So it's going to be x equals, and then whatever this number is, wherever it crosses the x-axis, that's what your number is going to be. Okay, so vertical and horizontal lines their equations look a little bit different, and because their slopes are different, that's why. What about lines that are parallel? Last thing we're going to talk about today. What if lines are parallel? What does that do in terms of slope, or what does that look like in terms of slopes? So I will do my best to draw two lines that are relatively parallel, but my computer does not want to work with me today, so I will give it my best shot. Well, I guess that's not terrible. If my two lines are parallel, then their rise over run should be exactly the same. So their slopes will be the same. Okay. So if I had an equation y equals, we'll say 1/2 x, maybe, then, and we can add in a y-intercept. Let's say it's across the y-axis at 1. Then if I want to write an equation for a line that's parallel to that one, I just have to make sure it has the exact same slope. So a line parallel to this one would also have a 1/2 x in it. Now, the y-intercepts can be different. You know, this one might cross at -4. Okay, the y-intercepts, where they cross the y-axis, is going to be different, but their rise and their run have to be the same. So if two lines are parallel, their slopes are going to be exactly the same. All right, that is the end of our review on slope. Your homework for all classes is going to be the parallel lines on coordinate grid worksheet.